Hello and welcome to Science Unscripted. It's Conor here.
And Gabe?
We often start out with emails, and we're not, or emails from our listeners all around the world, whether via podcast or on the radio. We're not going to do that this time. I'm going to start off with a quick correction, and I'm actually correcting myself here because nobody else did, not even you, Gabe.
I just listened to you say the word spiders. It was in response to Zlatko's audio message.
Right.
From North Macedonia.
Right. Zlatko sent us a message in reference to this research on chimpanzees in Arnhem in the Netherlands. And we played that, and he was sending us that message from North Macedonia, which is just north of Greece and right next to Albania. And I incorrectly said that North Macedonia was the place where this cave was. Mm-hmm. That research kind of came out of, probably 6 months back now. Yeah. And I was wrong about that. Right after we went out with it, I remember thinking, was it North Macedonia? No, it was Albania, because I think you ended up joking around that I was acting like a PR spokesperson for the country of Albania.
Yeah.
I was saying something along the lines of all these backpackers are now going there.
Yeah.
In any case, North Macedonia does not have a cave with about 100,000 spiders in it, or at least we don't know that. There's no research on it yet. There is that for Albania.
We would have known it because it was my idea when that research came out. We should do what's in German is called a Dienstreise, which means we should travel there and
go down in there,
hang out in that cave with 100,000 spiders in it. And everyone laughed at that and found it a good idea. I actually meant that.
You want to go down there?
I have a fear of spiders and a fear of dark water, by the way. I don't know if that matters, but those are two things. We live near the Rhine River, and when it's dark at night, I sometimes ride my bike down and get as close to that water. It makes the fear of the weight and the blackness of that water makes me feel things in intensity that I find very gripping. So the idea of going into a cave, again, with 100,000 spiders in it.
And a sulfurous smell. Yeah. To boot.
Yeah. But when I made that remark we have these meetings with all these journalists here at Deutsche Welle, and everyone laughed at me like, and I just shut my mouth.
Well, it'd be a long trip, and to go into a cave that, frankly, for all of you out there listening right now, caves do sound interesting, but you wouldn't hear the spiders. I don't think you would hear the spiders. It'd be horrifying if you could hear the spiders. I don't think you could. So we're not going to do that.
It would be the feeling of being in the same space as 100,000 spiders.
You would either get...
It would probably make me faint. The intensity of being near the Rhine River at night would be, 100 times more because of 100,000 spiders. I don't know.
Yeah, your arachnophobia would either be cured or, you'd be in a hospital somewhere. So we're not going to do that. What we are going to do is play a short clip here, and this is from the U.S. Health Secretary, RFK Jr., Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and he's going to talk a little bit about testosterone and fertility.
A teenager today, an American teenager, has less testosterone than a 68-year-old man. We're seeing sperm counts drop to 50% of historical rates.
Teenagers, he claims, and I'm going to emphasize the word claims, American teenagers have less testosterone than a 68-year-old man. And let me start with that one before going to the fertility issue. I feel this is necessary because testosterone is a buzzword. It's a catchword. It is being talked about all over the internet. And if you're not seeing it, our listeners are out there, it means you're probably just not in the same social media spaces as the often young men or middle-aged men who are. I was unable to verify that claim. I don't know, as is often the case, unfortunately, with the U.S. Health Secretary, he's taking pieces of data from various sources and not with a transparent way of looking into that. Typically, there is a clear downward line from the time of puberty. So if you're a 13 or you're a 14-year-old boy going through puberty, you're going to have typically the highest levels of testosterone you'll ever have in your life. By the time you're 60 or 70, 80, that is a clear downward trend all the way toward the end of your life. So I can't even make sense of that claim or figure out which data he's choosing.
It almost doesn't matter. Like the claim, the implication is clear from the way he was speaking about it, that low testosterone levels are going down and that is a problem. Low testosterone is a problem. And when you said that you were going to be talking about this today, I threw low testosterone at Google. Just those words, low testosterone. The first thing I found was trtuk.com. Look at this picture with two guys standing next to each other.
One is overweight and unhealthy looking. The other is not just healthy. The other one's jacked. He is ripped. He's muscular to the point of...
Looking at these two males, it's clear which one you would want to be. The one that you want to be has optimal testosterone, and the other one has low testosterone. He has got a waist that's double that. He's got cankles. It says optimal testosterone, but nowhere on this site does it say what that means.
Right.
What is optimal testosterone? And TRT is a medical procedure where you inject testosterone into your...
Not necessarily.
It seems like that's just what you should do.
Yeah.
That's what you should do. Just like RFK there was implying, we should just raise our testosterone. What happens when you do that?
Yeah, and that's I think what needs to be said for all of you out there. I'm not sure how many of our listeners will have ever thought to themselves, should I consider even thinking about my testosterone levels, or somebody who I love? But there are a lot of young men in particular, or middle-aged men, thinking about this because it's part of this sort of health optimization trend online. There are a lot of it seems like it's more of a young person trend, like a Gen Z trend. These large numbers of younger people spending more time in the gym, following influencers who are encouraging certain things. And there are some who are being led into this pseudoscientific medical gray zone area where they're hearing about this male hormone and how, I'm going to put this in quotation marks, it can improve performance in a variety of ways. The problem is, where do you get that from if you're somebody who's thinking about this? Let me start with the right thing. What you should do if you're concerned, is my testosterone at the right level? You would go to a medical doctor and ask for what would ultimately end up being a series of blood tests over time, different times of the day, your level fluctuates. And if you are under this threshold, this critical threshold of 300 nanograms per deciliter, just remember the word or the number 300. 300. If you're under that, now it's time for your doctor to say to you, hey,
we've got some options here.
Yeah, this is either something intrinsic happening inside your body that you can't control, and hence we're going to consider testosterone replacement therapy, or it could be connected to lifestyle. I think the four major factors are your diet, a lack of sleep, any drug use or smoking, and alcohol, and then also stress can be connected. Is there something we can change in about your lifestyle that will help this situation improve without medical intervention? That this is the right way to go about it. But what's unfortunately happening is people are seeking out this hormone almost as a supplement. And you're right, you can inject. You can also take it in pill form. There's a variety of ways to take it. There are creams. And because they're doing that without medical supervision, they are going too high. And what happens when you go too high anywhere, I'm not sure exactly what the unhealthy high number is, but I've been reading anecdotally about people pushing it high above the 1,000 or 1,200.
4 times the 300 number that we were talking about.
That was the low end, yeah. But going far higher than that. And at that point, one of the many things, there are blood clotting issues, heart issues, mood disorders, and one that is getting some attention now, kind of for the first time, is hypogonadism. And this is the idea that your testes make testosterone, will stop functioning because your brain basically says, well, I don't need you anymore. I have plenty of this hormone. I don't need you to produce it.
I have too much.
Yeah.
So the actual testes that are responsible for that in the natural way stop.
They stop it. Along with sperm production, which is why it's kind of interesting that in that quote that all of you just heard, RFK Jr. first mentioned the low testosterone, or claimed that for American teenagers, followed up by dropping sperm counts, because the way some people are unfortunately self-medicating, it would actually factor into the second part negatively. Mm-hmm. And nobody wants this, and nobody wants the kind of shrinkage that occurs in the testicles as a result of this. So this is what, I guess the reason we're mentioning it is because this is kind of a trending hormone to talk about, or it's being talked about. There's a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of people seeking avenues to get it, either illegal laboratories or some guy they know at the gym, or telehealth, where you dial up and say, hey, this is kind of what I'm looking for, and you may end up getting a treatment prescribed that doesn't actually match you. Lots of cases of this out there, so just be aware it has consequences, and there's a clear right way to get TRT. You go to your doctor and you get tested.
Yeah, repeat that right now. You go to your own doctor, and he might refer you to a urologist, and it's going to mean getting at least 2 blood tests, and then you'll know your number, and from there, consultation will lead you in the right direction. But don't look for it on the internet,
Right.
or from anybody
And
else.
right. And last thing I'll say here: remember when you hear anecdotes out there about, oh, it did so much for me. Remember the placebo effect, that people who think they're taking a medication or a drug believe that it's working on them even when it's not. Thousands of studies on the placebo effect. So, yeah, keep some healthy skepticism there. And if you really are concerned, talk to your doctor.
There is another study that was done out of Germany, the Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich, about decision making. And here, this might contradict what you just said, because it's about decision making and the amount of time, how spending a lot of time making a decision affects the quality of that decision in the end. So if you're basing your decision to take testosterone based on intuition, this is a bit contradictory, but what these researchers were after was they wanted to find out if spending a lot of time making a complex decision means that decision is going to be better, and they found that absolutely it doesn't. And what they did was they followed professional chess players and watched a lot of chess games and watched these players make moves based on, and looked at how long it took them to take certain moves, and then measured how good those moves were against how long it took for those moves to be made. And there are objective ways you can measure the objective quality of a decision based on a chess machine.
Well, there's a best move you could.
There
have
is
made.
a best move, and you can compare that move was better, objectively was better. And then they looked at how much time went into these decisions, and over time they looked at thousands and thousands of different moves in different games. The more time you spent on a decision, the worse it was.
Were they able? Okay, but here's the question: were they able to factor out the complexity of the decision to be made? Because what if when there's a clear, obvious thing you should do, I'm going to make that right decision very quickly. But if it's
they weren't comparing different moves. It was the same move. You could look at it, the complexity. You could narrow it down and say that move was exactly as complex as this move. And you took longer to make the move.
Gotcha.
It ended up being worse than the one where you didn't take as much time. Now, this is only chess, and you can't just say in life you should just make decisions based on your gut feeling, because that's what these researchers were going after. Once you pass intuition, everybody has a gut feeling, a decision that feels right. When you hit that feeling is probably when you should make the decision based on this kind of analysis. Again, that doesn't mean that you should make health decisions like the idea to inject testosterone.
No, that's your doctor's decision anyway.
That is your doctor's decision. But in this situation of playing chess, once you go past that intuition, then you start to think about it. You start to call into question, and there's a diminishing return to that. And what that means is the more you think after you've felt that something is right, the more that leads to a worse decision. So you think yourself out of what you kind of knew was right, or your intuition said was right, and that's what these researchers can say. And you can draw conclusions based on that as much as you want, but that's where it's at. And that seems, I don't know.
It's a confirmation of the idea that you can trust your gut feeling sometimes. I think some people forget that, or they tend to diminish that idea, and yet there are going to be a lot of factors, whether you're considering changing jobs, or you hear about this a lot with sports teams in a championship game, and that one of the teams clearly overthought it.
They overthought it. They knew what was right. They felt what was right, and then they started thinking about it, and that led to a decision being made that probably wouldn't have been as good as the one if they had just done it right away. And the less time you spent, the more it looks like you make that the decision based on intuition.
Just wait till my next game of chess. I'm gonna be the fastest. This guy's like bop bop.
Let's
bop,
play
bop,
speed.
bop.
Let us play speed chess when we get back up to the office and see what happens.
I'm gonna lose very speedily on that one. Real quick, here's some research I want to talk about last week, and then because of the hantavirus developments that we discussed on the show, wasn't able to. This is a really interesting one out of the UK, Durham University, where they were looking at basically, can you prime babies and then toddlers to like vegetables by priming them with those vegetables while they are in the womb, while they are a fetus.
And how would you do that? By eating a lot of vegetables yourself?
No, because then you can't control. In this case, we're talking about carrots and kale. That's it. Carrots or kale.
And how are you priming these babies with carrots and kale?
With a pill
Got
full of these powders with a very distinct smell. They smell different.
Got it.
One is bitter. One has carrots a little bit sweet. So
And what happens if you give a baby a carrot pill or a kale pill?
in this case, and I just like the way they did the study because it's not an easy one to conduct. They had 34 fetuses, 17 male, 17 female. And at the 32-week point of gestation and the 36, they gave them an acute single dose of either carrot or kale. And they have something called the FOMS. This is the Fetal Observable Movement System. It's codified. They have a codified system for looking at how the fetus reacts to that. And so then they codify that. Are they moving a lot? Are they grimacing or are they making facial expressions? How are they reacting to it? And so they did this twice during the pregnancy.
32 and 36.
32 and 36 weeks. Now, after the birth, at the 3-week point and at the 3-year point, they went back to them. And then what they did is they took a Q-tip, something a lot of people clean their ears with. Although the last time I got my ears checked, he was saying, hey, be careful about how you do that.
Because you can puncture.
It's gross. It's because you can pack your ears with wax is effectively what he was telling me.
Oh,
yeah.
You compact it.
Yeah, he was
sure.
he was asking me if I do that, and I said no, I don't. He's like, oh, okay, good, is what my German doctor said to me. Anyhow, they take these Q-tips and then they either dip them in the kale or the carrot, and after the birth, now they presented them with both smells, right? So in the womb it was one smell. Afterwards, now they get both, and they had a less negative reaction that was measurable to the smells that they had smelled in the womb.
Got it.
They had a less negative reaction. They were able to sit there and kind of smell this kale smell and be like, huh, I'm okay with that. It's not the same as saying, I love it.
Does this mean that generally if you put a Q-tip with carrot or kale to a normal baby, it's going to grimace and not like it?
More so, yes.
Okay,
more
got you.
so than what
Got
happened.
you. And if it had been exposed to carrot or kale, it would have been less negative, less grimacing
Right.
at 3 and 6 weeks?
At 3 weeks and at 3 years.
And 3 years.
And so this was the most complex part of it. They had to go into these homes afterwards, and they lost about half of they weren't able to follow up with, I should be careful about my language here. They weren't able to follow up with about half of the kids involved, right? They have to go to their homes, set up video cameras, I think in the living room. This is not easy to do, and then present them with these smells. And also have parents who are willing to do this all the way through. And so it's an indication that what you eat while pregnant can have an effect on your child's willingness to eat certain foods after they're born.
Yeah.
This confirms something that we talked about on the show. We went to the Max Planck Institute here in Cologne and talked to Sophie Steculorum.
I remember this, and it had to do with the aroma of bacon.
That was really, fascinating because they had pregnant mice smell bacon. They didn't eat bacon. They could only smell it while they were pregnant. And then those babies that were born, if they were fed, if they had a diet available to them where they could basically gorge, right? If they could eat a ton of food, the ones who had been smelling that fatty, rich smell while in the womb ended up having higher levels of obesity just because they were exposed to this bacon smell. So clear kind of pattern of research showing that what you even smell, or definitely what you consume while pregnant, that matters.
And the researchers in the kale and carrot experiment, have they offered any takeaways or conclusions that could be drawn on this research? Because I'm wondering, do you just take a pill with every single kind of vegetable or every single kind of healthy food that will be good for your kid and just take that? Because then you've primed it for all the good stuff.
Well, in some ways, it's kind of complex because I don't feel very comfortable really when there's research saying, hey, women, not only do you have to bear this pregnancy for 9 months, you also have to eat perfectly or have the perfect nutritional mix. That's extremely difficult. I think there are vitamin and packages that you get during the pregnancy. I remember that being a part of our 2 children being born, but
there's already enough things that they're not allowed to eat or drink,
right,
or do,
right.
Yeah.
Just it's evidence that what you eat can affect what your kids like, or even what you smell, that also makes sense because what Sophie Seculorum was saying to us is if you're born into the world with a blank slate, almost everything out there that you could eat as a small child is poisonous. Right? You shouldn't be eating tree bark or a beetle. Or a fungus. There's a lot out there that will kill you.
Anthrax.
And so, yeah, there's an evolutionary logic for a child being primed to know what to eat because of what the mother was eating healthily, right? That's, I think, like the biggest way to look at all this. But the last thing I'll say to all of you, and again, I don't want the message here to be that you're burdened with having to eat perfect foods and nothing but salads and only
something that'll make you grimace.
Yeah, eat what you crave. But if you've already gone through that process, like we already have, and we have a bunch of kids, like years ago I asked you whether or not your kids eat a lot of vegetables. And there's clear research there, this time from Germany. And I'll just play a clip of Jutta Matte, was her name, from Mannheim. And she had done a study on one way that you can take kids who are however many years old, 5, 7, 9, and literally get them to eat more vegetables. It's very simple.
If the family sits together at the meal table about 50% longer, which is 10 minutes in our study on average, then the child eats more than a portion fruits and vegetables more during this time, but it does not eat more bread or cheese or other things to put on.
I remember that talk. That seemed amazing. Have you been able to confirm that over the years?
I think of it every time we sit down to watch a family movie because we've got this wooden tray that we carry like the snacks on. If you load it up with vegetables, and vegetables are, I would say here in Germany, are relatively cheap compared to some other countries. You can do that. Slice them all up. You would not believe how many vegetables kids will consume, and adults too, out of boredom because they're in front of you and you can just keep chewing on them. They keep crunching in your mouth and giving you flavors.
Well, there's nothing else to do. You got to make that thing go away. And our kids have no choice. Adrienne does this automatically. This is in her DNA, to slice up apples and carrots and kohlrabi. What do you even call that? Is that an English?
I think that's
an English word.
A kind of radish. Is that yeah?
It's definitely white and tasteless. And I don't. If I do that kind of thing, I make a big bowl of popcorn. You know what I mean?
with a half cup of butter and a bunch of salt.
And salt. Yeah.
No, but I would agree with you that it's a more German tradition to just slice up a lot of vegetables. Yeah. Put them on various plates. No ranch dressing. I feel like in the United States, at least, there'd be
peanut butter,
something to dip it in to fatten it up. None of that. You just lay it all out and see what happens. And the result, this is my anecdote here, but it's based on the research that was done down in Mannheim, is that it's just a question of time. Whether you're sitting at the dinner table or elsewhere, if you're just sitting there for a long period of time, people will devour like pounds of vegetables. It's really impressive.
As this show comes to a close here, one last thing I wanted to mention, and this is research out of Poland, the University of Poznan. 2 researchers there wanted to look at what happens when a video game comes to an end.
Oh. Kind of like when a radio show comes to an end,
when a really riveting and immersive radio show comes to an end.
And podcast.
What does it do to us? And they did a survey of 373 gamers of all different kinds of games.
Can I just jump in for a sec and reassure our listeners out there? We don't mean like the end. We meant like the end of this particular broadcast. That's all we meant. Anyway, a bunch of gamers. 300.
We're going to stick with you no matter what.
Yeah, 300 and how many?
373 gamers of all different kinds of games, and their answers were so descriptive that they were able to find an actual scale for something that they called post-game depression. And what they found was that
post video game
depression, people who feel a certain way when a game comes to an end, what they found was that people have intrusive thoughts about this game. They cannot stop thinking about the game, even though they don't want to think about it. They just can't stop thinking about it. The next thing was that they didn't want it to end. They wanted to play on and on forever. The third thing is that they wanted to immediately go back to the beginning and play it all again. And then the fourth thing is that they had media anhedonia. Like not just video game anhedonia.
And to clarify that word for a lot of you out there, it's the inability, anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure from something you would normally feel pleasure from.
All media. So if your favorite video or a game that you've been playing for a long time and again was really immersive comes to an end, you don't want to turn your computer on, you don't even want to turn your radio on or your TV. Like you just want to avoid it because the researchers were from the surveys saying that people felt a sense of loneliness and that they won't be able to attain the joy and emotional intensity that they had during this game that has now come to an end. It's like, what's the point? There's no point. I'm not going to get back there. So why turn on CBS Good Morning or Good Morning America or Good Morning World or anything?
There's no way that the majority of gamers who immerse themselves to that degree turn that program on. But that confirms something.
Yeah.
I think the latest, biggest video game session I had, this was back early in the COVID-19 pandemic, and I was off sick with COVID.
Yeah.
And I got very, very deep into The Legend of Zelda.
It's amazing that you say that because what the researchers also wanted to find out was what kind of games lead to this. And by far, it was role-playing games
Open
with,
world?
with open world and a fantasy element. And Zelda is a perfect. We could name off a number of different games here, but that was
for you. It's SnowRunner.
Well, let me get to why that is in a bit, but because one of the things they said was that role-playing games, and I'll even quote one of the researchers here, is that our research shows that for many gamers, the virtual world becomes such a significant source of emotions that returning to everyday life requires time and psychological tools and work to go back to your own reality because those role-playing games were so immersive. You felt things so intensely and strongly and could feel like you were actually on an adventure. Why go back to, I don't know, buying carrots and kohlrabi at the supermarket?
Filing your taxes. I would, for all of you out there who are listening right now and like, I don't know what these guys are talking about. They're talking about losers who are spending too much time at...
53% of people between 6 and 64 play video games regularly.
Not only that, but I would...
Over half.
I would ask all of you to consider the best book series you've ever come across, whether it's a trilogy or 5 books or 7 books, and I would ask you to extend that and imagine that favorite series of yours went to like 57 books, because it sounds insane. There are a lot of people out there who are 700 hours into a game. They are 2,400 hours. I'm not exaggerating. This is a somewhat normal thing. And imagine leaving your favorite fantasy world or your favorite fictional world after 57 books. You'd be...
Oh my God.
You'd have a real feeling of loss.
I didn't cry, but I remember feeling on that level when Donkey Kong came to an end, and when I was young, a number of those different video games come to an end. But seriously,
sorry.
Now, what is my favorite game? It is a trucking game that literally can't end. There's so many maps and so many different tasks. I got to transport so much wood and so much metal and concrete. It can't end. Just find a game that will never end.
So they've solved it.
For me, yeah. I've solved that problem. I will play SnowRunner probably until I die. It will never end. I will never have to deal with the pain.
You found your life. You almost need a German word, like your Lebensvideospiel, like your life's video game.
And now there's research to confirm that behavior of mine. Thank you to the University of Poznan for doing this research.
Yeah.
And for anybody out there, describe what it feels like for your favorite game to end.
I was just going to say, and expand it, because the first thing that jumped into my head was a book series. But have you had that similar sense of real loss with something that you intellectually know it's fictional, it's not real, and yet it's gone now, and I can't go back. Even if I go back, I will be going back to something I already know.
Yeah.
Let us know, please. We are su@dw.com.
Science Unscripted.
DW, Made for minds.